All right. Double fries, no slaw. Kind of a morning show, but in the afternoon. And I'm riding solo. So if I look down a lot, it's because I'm looking at the chat and trying to engage with you guys. Give Decadent a coffee and dessert bar and bet you some love here in a minute. Thanks to the folks that jump in early, the folks that jump in first thing. That lets me know you have notifications on. We always get a big bump of people once they start seeing it on the timeline and stuff. But shout out the notification listeners because you guys are the real MVPs. Doing this a little bit later. I had some stuff to do this morning. Dude, I had a kid wake up in like 1 a.m. with an ear infection. So we're doing this later, but this was not regularly scheduled anyway. Just a lot of news going on around FSU. So figured we'd hop on and talk about it. Shout out the folks that are here, even though we didn't plan this or schedule it. Florida State gets a quarterback, gets a wide receivers coach. I see the comment. I cannot coach wide receivers. No, but I will tell you, I can wrangle children for sure. I can do that very well. Little guy woke up, ear infection. That's always fun. Dude, there is nothing worse. Like, we're going to complain about football here, I'm sure, in a minute. And there is a call-in. You're welcome to call in at any point. We're going to do spaces with Newberg over on Twitter at 2 p.m. So in 55 minutes, team ear infection. Oh, the worst. Yeah, you're more than welcome to call in. There's a call-in link in the description and in the comments. But before we complain about football, there is nothing worse than your kid being sick and them being like too little to like understand it. Like my daughter's 6, and I mean we're not really competing, man. People listen to Jeff, and he's the GOAT and always will be. But if I shouldn't read the comments while I'm trying to be in the middle of a story. But at the same time, like people catch the replay of this, they'll catch the replay of that. They'll be all right. Nobody competes with Jeff. He's the legend. So I'm just here, man, and didn't have time to do this later. He's napping right now. So, uh, yeah, there's nothing worse than when your kid is sick and they're too young to understand it. Like my 6-year-old, like if she gets sick, we can kind of be like, yeah, baby, you just don't feel good. You'll feel better in the morning, or you'll feel better in a few hours, or we'll give you this medicine. You'll feel better in 30 minutes, whatever. My son, my 2-year-old, like you can't reason with them. You can't tell them like, oh, you're going to feel better. He just is looking at you like saying, Daddy, help me. And that's, yeah, as much as I want to complain about football. So just be thankful that you didn't have a little one with an ear infection. See, don't you already feel better now? All right, I see Brandon in here. We'll get him in just a minute, but let's talk a little Thomas Castellanos and a wide receiver coach hire as well. Castellanos, just real quick thoughts. So I'll just be honest with you. I don't think that this is I think there's a lot of question marks, and this could go really, really well. It could. I'm not breaking any ground by saying this. I'm not telling you, like, oh, wow, great analysis. It's just so wide open to me. It could go well. To me, with Castellanos as your quarterback, if you improve the offensive line and if you improve the front seven defensively, you can go, like, your ceiling's around 8-4. Like, that's kind of what it says to me. I don't know that I could say that this is a 9-10 win team, though I think the schedule gets a little bit easier. I know Bama's week 1. I think you're probably looking at a ceiling of 8-4. The absolute disaster scenario for me with Castellanos is probably 4-8. Just the schedule should be a little easier with some of your opponents. And then obviously you could be anywhere between that. You could win 5, 6, 7 games. So Castellanos probably raises the floor of quarterback play a little bit based on what you want to do. But to me, it's really going to come down to what happens along the front, along the offensive line, who you're able to get in, who you're able to get to transfer, who in that room is serviceable. So the Castellanos thing to me is not, I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm not sold on. I like some aspects of Gus as an offensive coordinator. I'm not sold on Gus as an offensive coordinator. I said earlier, like, I'm not going to come on here and hype. I've done that for 3 years, right? Hype every transfer and hype every coach that we get and think that everything's going to be great. And for the people that are like, oh, you shouldn't be negative. I'm really not being negative. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. How can you predict it? And people, oh, you got to have faith in Norvell. You got to have faith. It's also hard for me to have faith in a coaching staff from the top that just won 2 games at Florida State. Like, not every move is perfect. Clearly, he showed you last year that he's not perfect, and he is not incapable of making massive fatal flaws. I'm not calling Gus a massive fatal flaw. I'm not calling Castellanos one of those either. I just don't know. It's hard for me to say that I'm certain that this works out. Now, Florida State would have gone out and got Cam Ward last year, or a Cam Ward type player. Like, yeah, I can tell you, I'm pretty certain this works out. Like, he's that level of player. Castellanos has done a lot of really good things, specifically against Florida State, and he's done a lot of really bad things. There's a reason he was benched this year. Just a lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes. How does it all work out, right? Gus has done a lot of really, really good things. He's also really struggled at times, and he's also been a coach that has seemed to be declining over the last decade. Do I think it could work out? Absolutely. Do I think the schedule sets up somewhat nicely for it to work out? Absolutely. Am I confident it does? No, not really. So I don't really have a hot take on Castellanos. Like, I know that's why people want to talk about that. People, I know that doesn't make very good YouTube, right? Like YouTube, TJ, you're supposed to have this clickbaity, catchy hot take that everybody shares and thinks, oh man, look at the clickbait. I think that if you're formulating an incredibly strong opinion on Castellanos one way or the other, I don't know. To me, it's just TBD. Again, he's anywhere at Florida State. He's anywhere from a 4-8 to an 8-4. It's hard for me to see you going much worse than 4-8. I know we won 2 this year. I think the schedule's a little easier. You're not playing as many bold teams. And it's hard for me to see us doing much better than 8-4. Now, they go out and really revamp the offensive line. They go out and get some real difference makers on defense. Maybe you could bump that prediction up. I'd be pretty hesitant to predict that Florida State wins more than 9 games next year, right? Like, I'm not willing to say 10. I'd say 9's an absolute ceiling. You got to go to Clemson, got to go to the Swamp, got to play Miami, who will reload at quarterback. Not at Cam Ward's level because nobody will, but they will reload at quarterback. And then you got to play Alabama too. And that's 4 really tough games. It's hard for me to say you're going to win half of those right now. I'd love to. I'd love to beat the rivals if you gave me that option. I'd love to beat Bama week 1. I don't think they're unbeatable. But yeah, Castellanos is an average quarterback. This is probably going to be an average team next year. I don't think that's negative. You just won 2 games. If you can get to 6, 7, 8, I think that's pretty good. Is there a scenario where you go 4-8? I think so. I think that's very possible. I don't think that's negative to just admit. Let me see if I can get Brandon in real quick. Thank you guys for the thoughts on the little guy. He is feeling a little bit better. Went to the doctor this morning. He's a champ. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have the crazy hot take on Castellanos. So, Brandon, what's your take? Do you have a hot take? I can hear you, but it's just kind of choppy. It's kind of in and out.
Do you think I should go out and come back in, maybe?
No. I think you're a little bit better now. How's it going?
Okay, how's it going? Okay,
Good.
okay, sweet. So, I'm kind of with you on that part. I don't see us winning more than 8, 9 games, probably. I do with the O-line problems. I don't think we're going to be able to fully assemble an O-line again. And I really think if we had someone more pro style, we would have some real problems. Just because of their movement in the pocket. But I think if you have a chance to flip some of those big games, I think you need someone like Castellanos who can just, when he's on, he can take over a game by himself. There is a lot of red flags, but I don't hate the take.
Yeah, I think there are definitely pros to it. Like, anybody who's making it all positive, and that's why I'm trying to be somewhat level-headed, right? I've done videos for 2 years just being an absolute hype man for Florida State, and then they went out and won 2 games when I said they were going to the playoffs. So I'm needing to distance myself from hyping every single move that they make up for my own mental health, and probably for you guys too. But I agree with that. Like, anybody who is going over the top, positive or negative, which most people aren't, let's be fair. Most people aren't going over the top positive and saying this is a playoff team now. But anybody that's going over the top negative, like Castellanos has the ability to take over games and play really, really well. Whereas, okay, so here's a good one. Like, if Luke would have been your quarterback next year, let's be very honest, they would not have asked Luke to just do crazy things for them and go out and win the game. And I'm not saying they necessarily asked Castellanos to do that either. But I do think that if he's your quarterback, you're probably looking at a similar outset. Like, Luke's probably going to go anywhere from like 5-7 to 7-5, right? Maybe 4-8, 8, kind of the same thing. Like, I don't think you're looking at Luke and saying, "Oh man, like that's absolutely our guy to take us to the playoff next year or win the ACC next year," or anything like that. I think that you're a similar thing. And yeah, did you maybe like Luke's future of what he could have done in 26 and beyond? Yeah, but I mean, Mike also has to win right now, or he's not going to be here. Um, so I don't know, but you're right. Like, could Castellanos go off for mobile quarterbacks have had success against Bama. Well, I mean, we've seen that. Could he go off in that game for 125 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns? Sure. I'm not predicting it yet, but yeah, he gives you an added edge, an added advantage. And certainly you went from a guy that had absolute concrete shoes to a guy who can actually move around a little bit. There are certainly some pluses there.
Yeah. One more thing. I think most of us would agree that our run game this year was more than it was pretty bad. It was probably the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life watching Florida State. I also think it's because they would just stack the box against us because we had no playmakers anywhere except for Lawrence Toafili, probably is our and Ja'Kai at most. But I think with Castellanos and the Gus Malzahn running system, I think give defenses a lot more to think about. And I think it'll give us a lot more opportunities to scheme open guys like Landon Thomas and maybe Elijah Moore if he steps up, or just some other players like that, because they always have to keep eyes on Castellanos, or he can just have a house call at any moment.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think you're right. Like, the offensive line to me is so much bigger of a concern. And obviously the running game is going to be predicated largely on how good the offensive line is, or even just average. But I think the offensive line is what it comes down to. Like, if the offensive, like, even more so than Castellanos, even more so than Kromenhoek, even more so than any, Cam Davis or Cromar or anybody that's in the backfield. Like, if the offensive line is just average, right? They were in the 90s pass blocking. They were in the 110s in run blocking. That might be reversed. It might be the opposite of that. But either way, you get the idea. Of 134 teams, they were around 100 grading out. And, yeah, you're just not going to win a lot of games like that. Like, if they can just get up to like the 50s or the 60s, just be average in college football, then they'll probably win 3 more games. And if they can't, if they're as bad as they were last year, or just slightly better, they're in the 80s instead of the 100s, then yeah, they're probably going to go under 500 again and not make a bowl. And so, yeah, I mean, if the offensive line can step up a little bit, if you can get just okay play out of Castellanos, like, he's going to make some mistakes. He's going to, like, there's no chance he just comes out and has a Jordan Travis 2022 season.
No.
But he's going to make mistakes, and that's fine. If he does, that's fine. If you can raise the talent around him enough, you'll probably make a bowl. I mean, if you go from 2 wins to 8 wins next year, you'll feel pretty good about it, right? 8's not the standard at Florida State, but if you can get to 8 wins next year, you'll certainly feel better about the direction the program's in. After that, they have to refigure it out for 26, but you'll have a lot of veteran talent on the team at that point. You mentioned the tight ends, the running backs. What if the offensive line is in the 50s or 60s next year? Can it get to the 30s or 40s the year after, right? Like, what can Herb Hand do with that group? Which I am excited about Herb Hand. I will say I'm a little underwhelmed with some of the offensive hires, if we're just being honest. But I like Herb Hand, and I think he'll help out a lot. Brandon, you still there with me?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Alrighty. Yeah, I got to get out of here. I appreciate you taking my call, though, TJ.
Awesome. Appreciate you, bud.
Yep, no worries. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Oh, let's see. Let me pull this back. Let's see. I got another comment on this. Yeah, the goal was not to intentionally go head to head with Cameron. That's never my competition. I don't really view Cameron as competition. There's enough space for everybody, but yeah, I don't know. Like, if people want to catch this on the replay, they can. I don't really care. I don't care about the live viewers, but I don't really care about the live viewers. People will watch the replay. We usually have, 200, 300, 400 people in here live, and then the video will get 7,000 or 8,000 views. So, as much as I appreciate all the live viewers that do tune in and interact, because the interactions make it a lot of fun, people will still watch the video later. Jeff Cameron's a legend. I'll never compete with him, but also he goes live every day at the same time. What am I just never going to do a show in the middle of the day? But yeah, all respect to Jeff. Like, the idea is not necessarily to compete with him. Again, you're more than welcome to call in. Also, Jeff goes live every single day at the same time. If you want something new every once in a while, then hit this when it goes live. But yeah, I get it. If you guys could tell my kids when to nap and tell them not to nap or get sick when Jeff Cameron's live, that would be most ideal. If you could come watch my kids, and then I won't do it when Jeff's live. There's a call-in link in the comments. You're more than welcome to jump in at any point. This is a good question. Why do they even recruit high schoolers anymore if they're just going to demand more money every year and not prove anything? Yeah, I mean, it's an absolute mess, right? The portal's a mess. High school recruiting is a mess. NIL is a mess. Everything is, right? And I mean, you're seeing that. I mean, that's not just happening at Florida State, right? Didn't Missouri just pay a guy a crap ton of money? They got the big commitment from Williams-Nwaneri. He was there for 1 year, and now he's transferring to Nebraska, right? Like, it's just not, we're focused on Florida State because that's where it happens. But, we saw the same exact thing with a more talented, like, I like Luke, like, I'm not trying to crap on him or anything, but like a more talented, more highly sought after prospect was congratulations Missouri for having him for 1 year, and now he's off somewhere else. So I think it's just kind of what it is. But I mean, I don't know what to, with the Luke situation specifically, I know that one hurts because it's a quarterback, but I don't know, I don't know what you're supposed to do. Like, all of football is just kind of a crap show right now. So I don't know how you fix it until maybe you get, 2-3 year contracts going or something like that. So Jake, what's up, man?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What's going on? What are we talking? QBO line today?
Just anything you want, anything FSU you want.
I'll tell you this,
man. Women's soccer if you want, bro. It's all wide open.
One thing that I have just keep coming back to, I saw Biscuit looks like he might come back around. Obviously, Castellanos commits. What was that yesterday? I just find it really ironic with these evaluations, right? We sent these guys away saying, hey, you're not good enough to play here, or maybe not the right position, or this or that. Now we're like how awkward is that conversation of like the staff? Is it like, hey, we love you again? It's like, I just don't see how this is going to work out with some of these guys that they're trying to bring back that maybe were, left and went to another school, or maybe we recruited out of high school or something. It just feels like from a cohesion, like last year, biggest problem in my opinion was cohesion of the team. You think about 23, a lot of guys that have been together, right? And then now you're bringing a bunch of transfers to play together, and it's like, well, staff didn't really love them, and now you're going out here and saying, hey, these are the guys that are going to give us the best chance to win. Sometimes I think that's just an awkward conversation, not only between the staff and those recruits, but also those guys that have been in the locker room for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you're completely right. I will say, I think what fixes it is winning, right?
Yeah.
Because they did the same thing a couple of years ago, not necessarily with bringing guys back, but when you're winning, like, people are all mad, the fan base is all mad about Castellanos, and I know this is not necessarily what you asked, but like, and I'm not predicting this, but if they beat Bama week 1, like, nobody's going to remember how mad we were that they took Castellanos, right? Like, and I'm not saying that happens, but so I think winning fixes it. But you're right. Like, I mean, you took Cooper back, last year after he was in Colorado for a year. You took DJ Lundy back after he was in Colorado for a couple of weeks. Pat Payton and Jackson and Farmer and everybody else on the defensive line threatened to leave and kind of publicly embarrassed you, and you came, brought them all back. And so, but I do think, not to credit the staff too much, but maybe an answer is just every situation is a little bit different. And so, like, Douglas leaving and going with Kenny, but then coming back because he wants a different option. Again, I wonder how much he really figures into the offense, what the idea really is there. Obviously pretty blocking heavy because they like their tight ends, or maybe they're concerned about a tight end leaving. I have no idea, but I think that just every situation is a little bit different. But if you just win, then it'll fix it. However, if they struggle again, every concern you have is legitimate, because things are going to start. It's like, well, that guy left. Why did I come back to this, or why did this guy come back, or I don't know, man. People give Dabo a hard time, and they don't take any transfers anyway. But and Sark, I saw had like a comment of like, once guys jump in the portal, like that's it. Like we ain't doing this anymore. And I almost just wonder if that's not like the better way to do it. Just,
Yeah.
hey, once a guy leaves, again, I don't know what Biscuit's situation was. I think they left on pretty good terms. I think I remember Norvell quoting him and saying like, oh, best of luck and blah, 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 and all this stuff. So I think they left on fairly good terms. And so, if you feel like it's a guy that can help your roster at the end of the day, then I guess you're kind of open to it. I also, think it's how you leave. It's the terms you leave on. It's did he want to leave? Did the staff ask him to leave or say like, hey man, we don't really have a spot for you or whatever. But if you told a guy you didn't have, to me, from the recruit side or the transfer side, if you're Biscuit and they told you like, hey, we don't have a spot for you, and then they're telling you like, hey, now we got a spot for you.
Like, what?
Yeah, like I'd be like, well, you didn't have a spot for me 13-0, but I'm good enough. All of a sudden when you're 2-10, like I'd be like, I kind of feel some type of way about this. But obviously, if he's considering FSU, he doesn't care, or cares less than maybe you or I do. But it's a weird dynamic to bring guys back, and rarely does it work. Like, did Duke Cooper ever make the field this year? Like, I don't think he even played. And so that was a weird one to me.
Yeah, I got one more for you. It seems like, we've been talking a lot about this 3-3-5 and Tony White's defense, right? Who, in your opinion, is that true nose? It feels like we don't really have that as far as like personnel on our roster. Like I think back to like past teams, like Robert Cooper would have been a perfect true nose in this 3-3-5. But do you think there's anybody on the team that can kind of fit this, like this new scheme that they want from like a personnel perspective? Or you think it's someone that they got to go out and completely realign through the transfer portal?
Yeah, I could look at the roster real quick, but just off the top of my head, I don't think he's on the roster. I don't think there's somebody on the roster right now that can play the nose technique that well. I think that, not that you would have wanted him back, but, I think, could Jackson have played it?
Yeah.
Could that have been a name? That would be one that, if he was playing well, probably would be the first one I think of. Obviously, that for many reasons is probably not going to happen, now that he's declared for the draft. And, I think that Florida State was pretty happy to move on from there anyway. But just looking at the depth chart, no, like there's nobody that sticks out and I'm like, oh, this guy could play. Like I think they'll have to go outside to find that guy.
That's the toughest thing for me is like Tony's talking on the presser yesterday about multiple fronts and how they're going to be, quote unquote, I don't even know if he said it like this, but more exotic, right? Different types of fronts and different types of looks and all that type of stuff. But I'm just looking at the depth chart myself and in the roster, and I'm thinking, with who? With who are you going to really use and move guys around? I know there's still some guys that we're waiting to hear on whether they stay or whether they go, but man, this is just like a whole different scheme, and it just feels like they're going to have to really find, 4 guys, 5 guys defensive line in the transfer portal that'll be day one starters. Like I just don't. I have a tough time thinking that they're going to be able to field that type of roster after 2-10, but we're about to find out.
Yeah, like I'm just looking at the defensive linemen, like just thinking through like the guys that are left. Grady Kelly seems like he may be a guy that sticks around the portal, or doesn't stick around, goes to the portal. I don't think he's big enough to play it anyway. Denaz White, I don't think he's talented. I don't think he can do it. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything.
I think they want him to end.
Yeah. Dante Anderson already, he's not big enough, so it doesn't matter. Jamori Flagg, but is he there? Like, is he ready? I'd say no. Like, again, not trying to be a jerk at any of these kids' expense. You would expect them to pull a couple of guys from Nebraska, but it seems like all the guys from Nebraska that enter the portal are all kind of edge prospects. So they got to go find somebody in the middle, I feel like.
Yep, I agree. Let me ask you one last one before we go, TJ. If it doesn't go well for FSU next year, who do you think is the top 3 on the hot board as coaches to come back and fill the Florida State void?
Well, you can't have a hot board without Dion, so that's got to be up there. I know that's not realistic, but I feel like that's just one you have to say. Depending on how things go, like Lane's always going to be a name that people mention,
True.
And that would be the big one that if Florida State wanted to go out and spend and make a big splash, and who knows what conference stuff looks like by then, and if they're able to, that would be one that certainly people are going to throw around and mention. Obviously, I don't think you keep anybody like that's on this staff to do it. Like, I don't think you're elevating a Tony White. Like, I think you have to go outside and do it. I guess unless the defense is really good. Maybe that's not a terrible one. If the defense is really good and the offense is just terrible, and that's why you lose a bunch of games. Maybe that would be the direction you go. So yeah, Lane, Tony White, and then I think I don't know. The third one would probably just be an up and comer from somewhere, right? Like you kind of go the group of 5 route again and hope it works out. I mean,
Man,
I don't know that. I mean, I don't know this would be a good one, but I mean, Stoops' name will get thrown around again just because people have that connection when he was here. Are you maybe able to pull, if I don't love this one, but if Alex Golish and USF have another really good year and he's kind of a hot name around that time, again, I'm not saying I love that. If Liberty is able to have a really good year, could you go after Chadwell? Again, that's kind of pulling down to the group of 5 ranks again. But I would think some of the names that maybe didn't get anything this year with really good years at Liberty or USF, could one of those guys get it? I mean, that would kind of be my thought of the direction you probably end up going. Lane's a fun one. There's some fun big names out there. I don't know that they necessarily would have the appetite for pulling somebody like that, but who knows?
yeah, I think you missed one that I thought for sure you were going to say, and this is my number one guy outside of Dion, is Dillingham. I mean, if he makes it through the playoffs and he takes them through another season and has a good run, 9-10 wins, maybe even has them in a playoff conversation, just the way he's coached. And it's not about like even the way he's coached. I think it's more about the mindset of this new world of college football and the business aspect of it. He's been really clear with his players at ASU about how things are going to go from that perspective and how they're going to bring guys in and out and let guys go. He's even had guys where he's let them go and praised them out the door and helped them get to other schools. So for me, I just look at a guy that's up and coming, that has a lot of juice, that is able to recruit, knows the Florida State landscape. I know the alumni boosters, the fans are going to want to go after the biggest possible name like that, Lane, Stoops, all that type of stuff. But for me, I just have a hard time believing if Alford is still there and he's the one making that choice, how you don't look at Kenny Dillingham, especially if they have a nice playoff run here, have a good season next year, and we're looking at it this time next year and they're still on that playoff bubble or they're that last couple teams in. It's hard not to think about him.
So the only thing, and I would love Kenny, don't get me wrong. I just don't know if will he leave? Like after seeing like, now I know Scott was going back to his alma mater, but like after seeing Scott go back to Nebraska and Rich Rod leave to try and make it work elsewhere and not stay in like at West Virginia, like, I mean, would Dilly kind of feel like this is my destination job? Would he leave for a Florida State? Now, I'm not saying you don't make a play at it, but like that would be my biggest concern with him.
Yeah, good point. Definitely.
If he was anywhere but Arizona State, I'd say he'd be an automatic. Like if he was at Texas Tech doing this right now, you'd be like, oh, that's your guy. But
I'll just leave it at this, man. I just think, even thinking back to the times of like Jimbo moving to Willie, moving to Mike and all that type of stuff, it just never felt like Florida State was serious players about really being that like top team and kind of dropping the bag or the resources necessary to either get a coach, whether that's the salary that you pay him, the resources around it, like the football only facility, or better yet, now in this day and age, NIL. If they put the right resources around him and gave him a plan that ASU couldn't do, I think that's kind of the play there. But here's the problem is that going back to those big names that you mentioned, the fans, alumni, boosters would want to throw that at a top candidate. And I think they might not want to do that for Dilly. So that's the challenge there. But I just think that people are, that's a name that I think everybody needs to keep on watch for these next 3 years on being a top coach, just like Dan Lanning at Oregon, right? All Mike's guys. Ryan Silverfield at Memphis came to Florida State and beat our ass this year. So like some of these guys, like we need to be thinking about, do we want an up-and-comer like that can really be someone that can take this program into this new world of college sports?
Yeah. What about this one? Here, I'll keep you on for a second. And FSU, I think it says FSU Bob or FSU Rob down there. I can't read because the font's so small. But I'll get you in just a sec. What about Rhett? I'd take Rhett Lashley in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
If things didn't work out.
That's an interesting one. I think, going back to what you said about Dilly and ASU, I think about SMU and SMU has the resources and the booster backing to go and throw the right resources at a coach like that to keep him around. I think that there'll be some other schools that, and I'm not saying that this is a team anyway that would be wanting to pull him, but like Think about the Ryan Day situation at Ohio State. If there was a situation like that that opened up at a really, really big program that wanted to take on a guy that was winning some games and throw some resources around it, I think he would make that jump to someone who's actually in the playoff conversation, not a program that at that point in time, speaking hypothetically, we would be coming off of the 2-10 season this year and then potentially only 6 wins next year is kind of what I would project for this team. Would he want to come to a program like that? Is kind of what I'm thinking. But it's a good name. I definitely like it. I just don't see it for Florida State.
Yeah, they'd have to pony up. No pun intended. I really didn't mean that. I really did not. I almost hate myself for saying it. So
that's hilarious. Appreciate
Jake,
you,
I appreciate you, man.
All right, be easy.
Thanks, man. Let me get Rob in here next. I will give a little bit of love real quick to BetUS. If you're betting on any of the college football playoff games, any of the bowl games, make sure you're using BetUS. Use our code YouTube150. You get 150% sign up bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your next two, all that up to $2,000. Appreciate BetUS for their support. Again, the code is YouTube150. I had Rob in, but I lost him. So let me replace him with Morgan real quick, and then we'll go from there. Uh-oh, Rob's in. Rob's back in. Rob, can you hear me? Sorry, Morgan, I lied. Hold on, Rob. I might have to switch something real quick. No, I hear you.
Me?
Yeah, how's it going?
Okay, my bad. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's going good, man. Going good. I appreciate y'all content, man. You and Richie keep it going, man. Keep it going. I appreciate it. I just want to get your thoughts on one thing, bro. So Mike Norvell is in a make or break year, and he's betting it all on Thomas Castellano, a 5'9", 190-pound quarterback that lost his job at Boston College. How do you feel about that? I know how I feel about it, but I wanted to get your thoughts on how you felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels risky, right? Like it feels
And we got
like
him the first day. The portal's been open a week.
yeah, it feels more like a Malzahn decision to me than a Mike decision. And so what I'll say is I'm not super confident it works out. I do think it probably raises with competent offensive line play. I think Mike is just trying to figure out a way to survive this season. And if he gets to 6-6, I think he survives the season. And I think Castellanos can get him there. Do I love it for the outset of Florida State? Do I love it for the big picture stuff? Not really. I don't love it from the, we're building toward the future or anything like that. I think Mike's trying to do anything he can to survive this 2025 season. And he's putting all his eggs in the Malzahn basket and saying, Gus, make my offense good enough to get to 6-6, 7-5. And Gus feels like that's his best way to get there, 6-6, 7-5, 8-4 max. And so I don't have a lot of confidence in it, just to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in it, but again, I think he's trying to. Our idea is like we need to figure out a way to get back to 10, 11 wins, right? And Mike's idea is just I need to get to a bowl game. I need to go 500 or above 500 and survive. And so can Castellanos help him do that? I mean, I think so. Do I love the pick? No, absolutely not. I think it's Florida State. You should be going after a top quarterback in the portal if that's the way you want to go. But I don't. To me, it just feels like a kind of more of a survival thing. Like I think Castellanos and Malzahn can get us to 6-6 in Mike's mind, and that's probably where his mindset is. And to me, that's not good enough at Florida State. But I don't know. Maybe he thinks it can work out. I don't know. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not trying to be super negative. Just I'm not sold for sure. Rob, I think you were kind of jumping in and out, and I appreciate the love. I'm going to get Morgan on real quick. Just before I get Morgan on, I will give a little love to Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar. If you're in Modesto, California, Warner Robins, Georgia, or Fulton, Maryland, make sure you stop by and see them. If you want to partner with them, you can always shoot me an email, shoot me a message, and I'm happy to connect you guys. Morgan, what's going on? Can you hear me, bud?
Yeah, I can hear you. Is Rob still talking, or?
He might be, but I had he keeps jumping in and out.
Yeah, I could hear him for some reason.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, kind of like not super FSU related, but kind of NIL wise, is it like possible? Because I think like a big part of NIL is kind of being on the cutting edge and finding ways to attract these kids that no one else is necessarily doing right now. Would it be possible for us to offer like performance incentives, not to like negatively impact kids, but like say you got like a true freshman that ends up going off like USC's defensive end. I'm forgetting his name, but as a true freshman, he went off and definitely like was worth more than he was getting paid that freshman year. I was just wondering if like it was even possible for us to offer like extra incentives for players that we bring in based on performance. I think that could actually do a decent amount to attract people to FSU, especially since I don't see any other program doing that. Just kind of want to get your thoughts on that and if it's even possible.
Yeah, so I think so by the letter of the law, no, right? Like you're not supposed to. That said, the one program I have seen talk about that, and I can pull up a link and well, probably not while I'm live, but if you just Google like Narduzzi NIL, like Pitt's doing this. Pitt said like, hey, we don't have the resources, we don't have the ability to pay what the other NIL stuff is, but like we are going to base things a little bit more around performance. And I reached out to Pete Nakos at On3, who is obviously very much in this NIL space. And I said, hey, like they can't really do this, can like this is pay for play. And he's like, yeah, but the NCAA isn't doing anything right now. And so like, it doesn't matter. So yeah, like you certainly can do it. You're running a little bit of a risk, but again, the NCAA really isn't punishing people. If they were to get Pitt in trouble, I think Pitt would probably sue them and say like, hey, you can't restrict our ability to pay players and structure contracts the way we want. And so the NCAA, even after Narduzzi kind of came out and publicly said like, no, we're going to do performance-based NIL. Like you do X, Y, Z and you're going to get more. That's probably why the NCAA hasn't challenged them on it. And if you're kind of a blue collar type program like Pitt that doesn't have unlimited resources like a Texas or Georgia or even, Florida State, who has far more resources, I think you do have to get creative with that. And you do have to try and attract people. And so, yeah, I think there's probably so to answer it, like you're not supposed to do it. You can do it. Pitt's kind of doing it. I actually did a video on the national channel on college football addiction with a Pitt reporter to talk about some of those things. That said, I think there's pros and cons to it. I think pros is that you might, to me, if it was you, right? So maybe here's the con. If it was you and you're a 4-star recruit and Georgia tells you, because like, let's be real, who we're really recruiting against in a lot of these recruitments, Georgia, Auburn, Clemson, Miami, Florida, all these other programs, LSU. And one of those programs tells you like, hey, we'll give you $500,000 to come here. And Florida State says, hey, we'll give you 300,000, but if you ball out, we'll give you 550 or 600, right? Like we'll give you a little bit more. Most recruits, and I'm not saying all of them, but like how many recruits are just going to take the sure thing, 500,000? Like, especially as a freshman, when you're not going to get on the field that early, like what are your real chances to ball out as a true, like how many true freshmen came in and balled out this year, right? Like the number in college football is like less than 20, right? And so probably less than 50, maybe let's back that up. And so if, maybe does that work out for a guy or two on your recruiting roster? Maybe, but like if you're a true freshman, like aren't you just going to go where the money's guaranteed as opposed to having to like get on the field, pass somebody else up, ball out for it? Because what if you have a bad year? What if you get injured? What if the depth charges doesn't work out your way? What if they bring in a different coach, like, with the Kromenhoek situation that doesn't fit your skill set and you don't have an ability to ball out? Like, I think most of these kids are just going to take the sure thing anyway. And so like, it is a creative way to do it, but I don't know. That's my first reaction. I'm not saying it can't work, but does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. And I mean, honestly, from what I've heard, it doesn't seem like FSU is losing out to other schools by like 150, $200,000. If you could like get real close to their number and then kind of sweeten the pot with that incentive or even match their number and then give them the incentive on top of it, I think that could like obviously you got the depth chart to worry about, like if Florida State's 5 deep at corner and you're trying to get a true freshman corner with an incentive package, it's probably not going to work because he's probably not going to see the field a whole lot. So obviously, it's like really conditional. I'm just so sick of losing out on these big name guys, and like if there's anything we can do to try to get more talent in the program, I think we need to be like pursuing that at the absolute most we can because it's not looking good right now.
Yeah, no, I'm in complete agreement there. I think, in talking with folks about NIL, and the people that I've talked with and the programs that I've talked with are the big three in Florida, right? Like I don't have a lot of contacts outside of that, but from literally
Mhm.
people at Miami, like not beat writers, like people that work at Miami, people that are well connected at Florida, and then people that are obviously well connected at Florida State, both inside the program and out. I don't really think Florida State's losing these battles due to NIL. Now, sometimes they are, right? Like sometimes you value a kid more than another program. Like for whatever reason, Florida State just doesn't value linebackers the way that other programs do. Miami and Florida are two that really do. Like look at their linebacker rooms versus ours. And so Florida State's not losing a lot of battles because of money, right? Like are there some? Absolutely. I think they're losing battles because they just don't have as good of recruiters, right? Like they don't put the same effort forward. Napier and Cristobal require a lot more out of their staff with regards to recruiting, and I just don't think Florida State does. And so I think, now I will say this: I think Miami has a bigger budget. I think Florida has more NIL resources without a doubt, but not to the point of like, Florida State's roster last year was probably between like 12 and 15, and Miami's was like 15 to 18, right? 20, people have rumored like 20 million. Like it's not like an insane gap. You're going to get more talent. Florida's budget was very similar to Florida State's, but they also have like relentless recruiters. And if you bring in a guy like Lagway that people want to play with, that helps you too. Like you can, if you're recruiting a wide receiver, I liked Luke, but I'd probably rather go play with Lagway than Kromenhoek. So I think that helps too. And then the Cam Ward effect was really real too. Like they got Ward, and then immediately they got the best running back in the portal in Damian Martinez. They got a couple of the best linemen in the portal. They got a couple of really good wide receivers in the portal. And so it immediately helped them on that front too. I mean, they nearly got, I truly believe that if Cam Ward would have decided before the NFL stuff, I think they would have got Jeremiah Smith too. And so, yeah, I do think that you're right. Like the recruiting has to get better, but I don't think it's most of the time not for a lack of money. Like I don't think KJ Bolden took like an insane bag to go to Georgia. I just think it's recruiters.
Yeah, and obviously you got the it's just hard to pull elite guys out of Georgia when Georgia's like a top 5 program or whatever. So
Yeah.
I mean, I was shocked, or not shocked, but like really happy that we got KJ, but not super shocked to see him leave. Um I don't Have you heard anything else about Luke? Like all I've heard is that he wanted more money and that it was a potential like not a great scheme fit with Gus Malzahn, but I don't know. I just don't really buy the not being a scheme fit for Malzahn because Luke showed that he can run and run effectively as a true freshman. Honestly, it was probably the best part of his game that he brought to the team was his ability to scramble. And I know like probably they want somebody a little bit more mobile and like more agile, kind of like Castellano or Nick Marshall or Jordan Travis. But I didn't think Luke was a terrible scheme fit. And I mean, just on pure talent, I think he's way more gifted of a passer than Castellanos will ever be. So I wonder if you've heard anything else or if there maybe I'm just off base on my assessment, but I really thought Kromenhoek could run Malzahn's offense pretty effectively.
Yeah, I don't. So just like I think the decision to commit or sign with a program isn't always just one thing. I think that the decision to transfer typically isn't either. Now, for some recruits, it absolutely is. Like for some recruits, it is all money or all program or all development or all relationship, whatever, right? But for most recruits, it's several things. So I agree with you on the my thought on the Kromenhoek situation is that money, from people that I've talked with, which everybody has their different sides of the story. I know the family says it's not. Money was absolutely an aspect of it, but so was the scheme, right? Like I think Luke is agile, he is mobile, but I do think that he wants to be developed as a very pro style quarterback who can get to the league and play that way. And so I don't think he would get that. I think that, could he have run Gus's offense? Absolutely. Is that what he saw as best for his future? Probably not. I also think another aspect of it is when we took Luke and he rose to be a 5-star and he was, a really highly touted quarterback that was the future at Florida State. Obviously coming off 13-0, we could have never predicted the season would go the way it did. And I think that the thinking from Luke's side and from Luke's camp side was, hey, we're going to sit, we're going to bide our time, we're going to be the backup. We may see game action, we may not here in 2024, but the reins are ours after that. And maybe that was an expectation that was set forth by the staff. Maybe it was just an expectation that was in the Kromenhoek's side's mind. But then when you bring in, it looks like Castellanos is coming in and Brock Glenn's not leaving, and you've got a 3-horse race that you have no idea who's going to necessarily win that. I think Luka wants to play, and I don't think that he certainly could have gone out and won the job. But I don't think it was a guarantee. And so then if you're sitting there like, well, I'm not being paid what I want, I'm not running the kind of offense that I want, I am not even guaranteed a starting spot like I thought that I was going to get going forward for 2025 and beyond, maybe this isn't the best place for me. So to me, it's not all money, it's not all fit, it's not all scheme. Like it's all of those things together. And if all three of those things are true, like he doesn't think it's what's best for his progression, he's not making as much money as he wanted, he's got to compete for the job, then yeah, I don't even really blame him. Like I think it kind of makes sense. Like you want to play in a different style of offense that you think is better for you and you want to make more money, then I mean, go do it. Like I don't even really fault him for that.
No, yeah, I get where you're coming from. I just wonder if the coaching staff would have been like this aggressive in pursuing Castellanos in the transfer portal if I mean they might still have gotten him obviously, but probably not on the first day. Might have kind of drug their feet, lowballed Castellanos because they knew they had Luke in the wing and he could run the offense. I don't know. I'm pretty disappointed with it because I thought Luke was going to be really good for FSU for the next 2 years, and I feel like honestly, if there was a way to, if Norvell's job wasn't on the line, I wonder if that in better just to keep
Yeah,
him and develop him and let him take
yeah, I think so. Like if Florida State just goes 8-4 this year, right? Like we all would have been disappointed. The over under was
his
9.5.
lumps by 2026.
Yeah, like if you would have just won 7 or 8 games this year, there would be no pressure on Norvell. Like a little bit of pressure, right? Like we don't want to go under, but like nobody would be freaking out. You'd be like, oh, okay, well we went 8-4, we went 7-5, whatever. Wasn't a great year, but we'll rebound. We'll be fine next year. And then I think you do roll with Luke because there's not pressure to win immediately. And if you take your lumps with a young quarterback in 25, then I don't think anybody's freaking out. I think everybody's just kind of like, well, like that's, no big deal, right? Like we got a young guy, he'll be really good in 26. We'll gear up and go. But yeah, I think the pressure or what happened this year probably did dictate that. But yeah, if you go 8-4 this year, you probably just roll with Luke. You probably have the same exact staff coming back in 2025 as well, which maybe that's not a good thing. So I don't know. Hey, at the top of the hour at 1 p.m., everybody that's in here, we are going to do a Spaces over on Twitter with Josh Newberg. I don't know how many of you guys, if you have ever been to an FSU Spaces over on Twitter, just let me know in the comments. If not, it's not a big deal. You certainly don't, you don't have to follow on every app or hang out everywhere. I think you can, I don't even think you have to create a Twitter account to jump into the Spaces, But we're going to continue this on in, like I said, 7 minutes. We'll continue this on. And if you have questions for Newberg, you do have to create an account to ask questions. But if you have questions for Newberg, you literally just click in and you can hit request to speak. We try to get through as many people as you can. If you want to talk about quarterback, if you want to talk about, we haven't even gotten a chance to talk about Harris, the wide receiver coach hire. If you want to talk about that, you can ask Newberg about that. Certainly he'll have a little bit better of an understanding of that. If you want to jump over to Spaces at 1 p.m., I just put the link in the comments. You're more than welcome to come join us. Again, my Twitter is just TJ_Pittenger, or you can go to Josh's and you'll see the link there as well. So come hang out with us in about 5 minutes. Morgan, I appreciate you. Yeah, I saw it disconnected. No worries at all. Appreciate you for jumping in and chatting. Some good conversation there for sure. I'm more than happy to jump through some of the comments as well. Shout out to bathroom listeners. Spaces was the OG. This is kind of like a baby Spaces. Is that what you call it? Like going live on YouTube. Actually, the OG were Josh's Facebook lives back in the day when he worked for 247. Those were the OG. Spaces was really just stealing from that. And then I'm obviously stealing from Spaces by just doing this over here. But y'all I like this crowd a little better than the Twitter crowd anyway. Don't tell Twitter. Let me look through some comments and see if there's anything fun over here. Again, appreciate Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar, for their support as always. Doing an extra show for them just to show them some love. They're opening early next year, a new location in Florida. We'll have to do a live show from there. I spoke with their CEO, Patrick, earlier this week, and I do think that it'll be fun to do a live show there. So hopefully some of you guys that are in that area can make it out. Yeah, a lot of Lagway love in the comments. Let's do that on a different show. Go take that to Alley Peak show. Now I think he is going to be really good. It's, hopefully Napier just screws it up enough to where they don't ever win anything really big with them. But yeah, I think Lagway will be great, and admitting that sucks as a Florida State fan. Let's look through. If Luke shows Mississippi State that isn't just getting, is that where he's projected? Is Mississippi State the thing? Has that come out here? Mississippi State. Yeah, that's pretty wild, but yeah, I don't know. I'll save my comments and thoughts there. So Mississippi State, that'd be wild. Maybe he'll beat Florida for us next year. Will you guys cheer for Luke when they're playing Florida? That game's in the Swamp. So he'll get to play in the Swamp. He'll get to play against Florida at home and against the Swamp. Hopefully he has less fumbles, if that's the case. Just a visit so far. So, yeah, I mean, we got to stop with the Lagway love. Wasn't he just okay against Florida State? Let's not. Once you finally played a good ACC defense, not that SEC trash every week, he didn't look so good. All right, 156. I got to jump over to Spaces. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Appreciate BetUS. Appreciate Decadent, a coffee and dessert bar. Listen, I'll put the link in the comments one more time. Come join us over on Spaces in 4 minutes. All you do is click in the link. I don't even think you have to create an account if you want to listen in. Appreciate you guys, as always, for hanging out. I just looked at the clock. Got to get rolling. But thanks for hanging out for about an hour today. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.